Hey Queens, today I am going to be solving some Reddit dilemmas. If you have any personal ones that you would like resolved, feel free to leave a comment. Okay, so first up we have, am I the a-hole for abandoning my daughter on vacation? My wife and I have always dreamed of celebrating our 40th anniversary with a luxurious vacation. Just the two of us, reliving the romance of our early years. We had it all planned out for years now, and we're excited beyond words. Enter our adult daughter, Jane. Jane and her husband got wind of our plans and promptly invited themselves and their two children, 9-year-old female and 5-year-old male, along. I originally put my foot down and told them this trip was just for us, which upset her some. But my wife has a hard time saying no to Jane, as she is the youngest of our children and our only daughter, and she didn't want to hurt her feelings, so she reluctantly agreed to let them join. I wasn't thrilled about it at the time, but I wanted to make my family happy, and I knew my wife was also okay with the idea of a family trip. Even if she was heartbroken we wouldn't get our romantic trip. We went along with it. The place we were originally going was not child-friendly, so we changed course and decided on an all-inclusive family-friendly resort. We paid for the resort and our grandchildren's plane tickets. Jane and her husband only had to pay for their own airfare. Here's where things get complicated. As the vacation got closer, I started having a change of heart. I realized that our 40th anniversary was a once-in-a-lifetime milestone, and I wanted to honor it in a way that was true to our original plans. My wife and I might not be able to afford a trip like this again for quite some time, and it's something we always wanted to do. So, without consulting anyone, I switched our tickets last minute to go to the romantic destination that my wife and I had originally planned for. I did not tell Jane or her husband. I didn't even tell my wife until the day before our flight left, which was a day before Jane's flight left for their vacation. It wasn't an easy decision, and I feel guilty about it. But I wanted our 40th anniversary to be the special, intimate celebration we had always hoped for. We called Jane after we landed to tell her, and she was extremely upset to say the least. She seemed of the idea that we were going to look after our grandkids so she and her husband could have alone time, and now that I abandoned her, they would have to do it all themselves. I hung up on them when my son-in-law started shouting, and my wife and I enjoyed the rest of our trip. They came back the same day we did, but have not answered any of our texts, and Jane seems to be ignoring me. My wife told me she vastly preferred our trip to the family trip we would have taken, but she still doesn't like how Jane is mad at us and wants me to apologize. I'm not sure I want to after learning Jane and her husband were using us for free babysitting and a free trip, but I feel like I should just to keep the peace. Am I the asshole for changing our trip destination last minute and leaving Jane and her family to fend for themselves? Absolutely not. In fact, good for you for taking charge and putting you and your wife first. Jane doesn't really have the right to be upset, and it's a bit selfish of her to disregard your 40th anniversary. I don't see anything wrong with changing plans last minute, and I think the only reason she is upset is because her needs were not complied to. And if she is upset, confused as to why there was a lack of communication beforehand, maybe she needs to ask herself why her own parents are reluctant on being open with her about the situation. But yeah, definitely not the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband he's too broke to be sexist? So my husband comes from a traditional family. Mom's a stay-at-home mom. Father was sole provider. I come from the opposite. My mother pretty much forbade from ever being financially dependent on a man and drilled that into me early on. My husband worked hard to unlearn the values he saw replicated at home. He, often more than, pulled his weight at home, was an engaged and present father and a genuine partner. The one thing that grinds my gears is how much weight he puts on the opinions of his family. I get that we all want our parents to be proud of us, but this is too much. My in-laws are staying with us for 2 weeks. Our usual MO is, I prep breakfast. We all eat lunch at work, school, and my husband makes dinner. We have a cleaner, but she's on holiday, so in the meantime, we're DIYing the cleaning where it's down to everyone to keep their space clean and common spaces we all clean. This is how we've always done it, and it works. My in-laws hate that I'm one of those modern women. They hate that I work. They hate that I don't find my purpose in being a wife and mother, and they hate that my husband pulls his weight at home. We spoke pretty frankly early on, where I established my boundaries and told them I won't be chastised about how I live my life in my home. When I am a guest in their home, I accommodate their ways and play the daughter-in-law they wish I was. They have, for the most part, respected this. I got home yesterday after work tired and starving. I typically get home 6:15 to 6:30-ish and we eat at 7. I said quick hellos and ran up for a pre-dinner shower. When I came down, I went to the kitchen to help set up for dinner and found nothing ready. I asked my husband about it, but he wouldn't look at me, and his mother answered that he hadn't cooked anything. She told me I needed to do my duty as a wife and cook for my family.
Are you crazy? That shit is so disrespectful. So disrespectful. That shit got me so hot.
I just walked away and ordered takeaway. I dished up for me and my kids, and we sat at the table to eat. My husband and his parents served themselves and joined us. My mother-in-law was still going on about what was wrong with me and why I was a failure. I asked my husband if he had anything to say. He said his mother had a point, and it wouldn't hurt if I acted more like a proper woman and took better care of my home and children.
Hey yo, trophy wife, out you won me. Until you had to find out it's one me. Now you pinched all your bum knee.
He said tradition was tradition for a reason, and it was kind of insulting that I thought I was too good for how he was raised. This is where I might be the asshole. I told him tradition won't allow a man on $35,000 to support a family of 5, and he was too broke to be so sexist. He looked hurt, and I saw tears welling in his eyes. He excused himself from the table. I regret saying this in front of our children, but him saying that to me after I'm busting my ass to clean up his mess on top of having to deal with his parents was too much for me. Am I the a-hole? I wouldn't say you're the a-hole. It seems to me that your husband probably slightly agrees with his parents, hence the lack of defense, but just doesn't have the guts to tell you himself, so kind of secretly loves when they grill you about being traditional. I get he is in love with you, and probably vice versa, but I feel these are things that need to be discussed in detail before committing long-term and settling with someone. There are plenty of women that don't mind following traditional norms, so it's slightly unfair of him to commit to you and build a family and give you a hard time for something he knew he was signing up for. Regarding the comment on his finances, I would say it was probably better said in private, however, that is a good point. He can't expect you to be dependent on him if he can't pull all the financial weight. Like, does he want you and the kids to suffer just so he can feel more masculine? Am I the a-hole for not ordering any food so I wouldn't have to split the bill? I, 27 male, have been a part of a small friend group, around 8 people total, basically since college. For some background, 2 people from the group, Susan and Greg, are just absolute leeches. Going out for lunch? Expect them to order the most expensive thing on the menu, then feed you some sob story about their finances, and then dumb half the bill on you. Last weekend, Dan, one of the people from the group, told me about a casual dinner. I told him how if Susan or Greg were there, I wouldn't be able to come. He tells me that they would be there, but I should just put my opinions aside and come just once. This is kind of where I might be an a-hole. I agreed with him and told him I would be there. I show up and we all get to talking. Everyone began putting in their orders. Most of them spent about $40. There were only about 6 people there. When it gets to Susan and Greg, they both order expensive dishes, around $200. When it was my turn to order, everyone looked at me, but I just pick up the menu and point to the $4 Miller Lite and sent the waiter away. Dan asked why I hadn't ordered anything, and all I said was that I lost my appetite. The other 2 friends got up as well to cancel their orders and just have drinks. After the main courses came out, I saw Susan and Greg picking at their food. The waiter then brings over the check. Greg then grabs the waiter and asks him to split the check 6 ways. I stand up and correct him, saying the check was to be split 3 ways. Greg looks at me confused and asks why, since we always split the bill. I reminded him that 3 of us had not eaten any food, so we would just be paying for our drinks. So basically, at the end of the night, Dan, who probably only ate around $50 worth of food, was stuck with a $146.98 check at the end. Yes, I remember the exact number. I swear I saw his jaw drop when he picked that receipt up. I slid a $10 bill towards the check, said goodbye everyone, and walked out.
I don't give a fuck. Do I look like I give a fuck? Because I don't. I don't care. I don't care.
The next morning, I found my phone full of texts from Greg and Susan telling me I was an a-hole for not ordering any food and forcing them to pay more than they had accounted for.
Everybody look to the left. Everybody look to the right.
I honestly laughed because the stakes alone were more than what they had paid, but to each their own right. I also got a lot of messages from Dan saying that I could have just not came instead of pulling that stunt and getting him stuck with an outrageous bill. Not the a-hole. If Susan and Greg are in such a financial pickle, then they should prioritize their spending and not eat out so often, let alone ordering food that costs an arm and a leg and expecting everyone else to chip in. I don't know why, but Dan is low-key an op because how is this your fault? He's completely ignoring the elephant in the room, which is that Greg and Susan are calculated and know exactly what they're doing by splitting the bill. To sum it up, I think you need new friends. Or if your friendship is really stronger than it seems in this scenario, then maybe stop eating out with them, or hanging out in situations that involve group purchases. Am I the a-hole for outshining the bride? So I, 27 female, am a Black African woman. I'm living and working in Germany for a fixed period on secondment. While here, I became quite friendly with a colleague, 60-year-old female, and she invited me to her daughter's wedding. I was excited as I've never been to a white wedding. I asked if there was a dress code/color scheme to adhere to since it wasn't specified on the invite. I was told the code is dress to impress. Bet. Day of the wedding, I understand the assignment. I wear my traditional wear, which is really beautiful and obviously not German. The garment is green, so no problem there. Or so I thought. I get a lot of questions and compliments at the wedding, which I genuinely downplay because it's not my day. My colleague seems colder than usual, but I pay it no mind since she's mother of bride and could be preoccupied. The bride is downright rude to me, but again, I give her grace. I congratulate her and thank her for including me, and I get a tight, straight face in response. I keep to the edges of the room as the music isn't really my vibe, and I'm just observing how European weddings work. I leave around 8, after 5 hours, and go home before the wedding finishes. Monday, I walked into whispers in the office, people actually strangely and more reserved than usual. An office friend pulls me aside and fills me in. Bride's mother is fuming. My outfit was too extravagant, over the top, and inappropriate. I drew attention from the bride and commandeered the room. I was rude and disrespectful. She's told people all about it, apparently. I approach MOB and ask to speak, but she says she has nothing to say to me. I ask her why she has something to say to everyone else about me, but not to me. And she calls me an insolent child. I explain to anyone who scolds me that this was my first white people wedding. I specifically asked what to do, where, and followed the guidelines. Where I'm from, there's no such thing as outshining the bride. Weddings are a fashion show and a chance to wear your best and brightest clothes. They told me this isn't Africa.
Block. Delete. The fuck.
Which was racially coded, and people here have manners. I laughed and told that person to go to hell.
Let me pretend I care. Okay, I'm done.
So she's telling people I lack remorse for my behavior. I'm wondering if I really am the a-hole. Definitely not the a-hole. These people are fragile AF. You obviously didn't have malicious intent because you directly asked what the dress code is. If it was that big of a deal to them, they should have specified or at least jokingly said, just don't outshine the bride. Or something. Not to mention the blatant racism the second you don't act the way they want you to. It's as if they were waiting for the perfect excuse to exhibit their racist tendencies and microaggressions. Good for you for defending yourself, and to be honest, I'm sorry you had to deal with that. It all seems a bit cliquey, because if she had a problem, fine. But to make it everyone else's problem and recruit people to hate on you is absurd. All I will say is, be careful. Nobody who truly cares about you as a person switches up that abruptly. In such a vicious way. They're acting like you unalived the family cat. Maybe just keep coworkers as coworkers. Let's stop expecting friendships from them. Because now you have to deal with this in the workplace, which you shouldn't have to. Just work and go home. And that brings us to the end of the video. Make sure to subscribe to see regular content on my channel, and remember to comment if you have any personal dilemmas that you wish to be resolved. Thanks for watching.